I think we're live on YouTube. Are we good?
About 2 seconds. Yep, we are now good.
Okay. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the monthly meeting of RMSEL and the BOCES. My name is Dr. Carrie Olson, and I'm recovering from COVID. So if I sound a little hoarse, that's why. And I represent Denver Public Schools on the RMSEL board. I'd like each person to introduce themselves, just so our viewing audience knows who you are. I'll go to Angela Christensen next.
Hi, Angela Christensen, Littleton Public Schools.
And Ann Egan.
Hi, Ann Egan, Cherry Creek School District.
And Becky.
Becky Myers, Douglas County School District.
And Brianna.
Brianna Mestas, the Public Education and Business Coalition.
And Chad, I'll turn it over to you to introduce yourself and your staff.
Okay, Chad Burns, Executive Director at RMSEL. I'll turn it over to Julie.
Julie Stelzer, Finance Director at RMSEL.
As well as Chris.
I'm Chris Vedito, Enrollment Coordinator at RMSEL.
Great. Thank you all. And I know we have two guests today. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
I'm Megan Lonergan with Cherry Creek School District. I'm sitting in for Sonia this morning.
Great, thank you.
Assuming I'm the other guest,
Yes.
I am Alicia Maslick, and I am with CLA, the auditor for RMSEL.
Great, thank you. And welcome to you both as well. And welcome to our viewing audience. We're glad that you could be here with us this morning. I call this meeting to order, and our first agenda item is the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda for November 29th, 2022.
A second? Oh, perfect. And all in favor, raise your hand. Aye. Perfect. Thank you. Our next agenda item is our approval of our minutes from the October 25th, 2022 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from October 25th?
Motion to approve minutes from October 25th, 2022.
Do I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor, raise your hand. Makes it easy for Julie or Julie or Chris to capture all of us. Thank you. Motion approved. And our next agenda item is the Executive Director report. So I'll turn it over to Chad Burns. Thank you, Chad.
And thank you everyone for being here this morning. Just want to begin today by thanking everyone for your willingness to be flexible as we were required to move today's meeting to this virtual platform. As always, for our viewing audience, meetings in the RMSEL BOCES are public that are broadcast live on the RMSEL YouTube channel, which can be found with the meeting title, RMSEL BOCES meeting November 29th, 2022. Want to provide some opening remarks today. It's important for us as we begin for our board, our staff, and extended community to pause and reflect on the tragic events in our local community and nation at large. In the past 2 weeks, we've once again been struck by acts of violence fueled by hate. The shooting at Club Q in Colorado Springs, perpetrated against our fellow citizens that identify as members of the LGBT plus community, is a reminder that division among one another can lead to acts of violence fueled by hate. While this tragedy was carried out less than 100 miles from our homes, 2 other violent acts of hate also occurred across our great nation. 6 co-workers at Chesapeake Bay, Virginia Walmart were murdered along with 4 students at the University of Idaho. While these 3 acts of senseless violence were carried out fueled by division and hate, we stand against any act of harassment and hate at RMSEL. Everyone should be able to dance the night away, attend work, and learn safely as a community. As I've read again and again over my time at RMSEL, our founding principles state diversity and inclusion. Both diversity and inclusion increase the richness of ideas, creative power, problem-solving ability, and respect for others. In expeditionary learning schools, our students investigate, value the different histories and talents, as well as those of other communities and cultures. While these tragedies are elevated at a national level, we also are mindful of the increase in crime and violence in our local community. As a school community, we work together as crew to ensure that kids have a safe and welcoming environment where they can learn and grow. We remind ourselves of Kurt Hahn's desire for learning environments where compassion above all is manifested in our daily actions. Schools play a vital role in standing against acts of discrimination, hate, and violence. We must lead by example so that our students can do the same. So thank you for allowing me to share that this morning in recognition of the students in our community that are reeling, and as well as our community members at large, both locally and nationally. Prior to the Thanksgiving holiday, I want to recognize last year that our school crew leadership team, which consists of a teacher from every school level, learning specialists, elective teachers, and administration, came together to review feedback and needs of our staff. Collectively, this team shared the desire for teachers to learn collaboratively in large blocks of uninterrupted time. Teachers shared that this time was vital to create individual case studies that build towards learning expeditions, compelling topics of study. On Monday and Tuesday, prior to break, we came together as a group in a 2-day curriculum camp. This camp served as guided, uninterrupted planning time where teachers were able to build their first case studies to be implemented in January. A RMSEL case study consists of task descriptions, supporting resources, scaffolds for differentiation, rubrics, assessments, and opportunities for students to learn outside of the classroom in the field. Our staff continues to elevate their instructional planning during these full-day professional development sessions, and I look forward to our next series of camp and thank the board for recognizing this in the construction of our school calendar. Also in celebration today, we won't have our student body with us due to the disruption of the virtual platform, but I wanted to share on their behalf, and they will be once again welcomed in to our January meeting, along with our 4th and 5th grade students, who will share with you their 200 Bowls project that is a collaborative project in art and humanities. But recently, we had a group of students, and as you know, at RMSEL, we have class sizes of 25 students, and our senior students were accompanied by their math teacher, Adrian Hunter, and a former RMSEL teacher, Marshall Moore, who now works at Aspire Financial, who took the students to the Junior Stock Market Challenge at the University of Denver. This large-scale event welcomed 44 total teams. Many teams were from the largest metro area schools in our partner districts. RMSEL was able to field 4 teams, of which 3 of those teams finished in the top 10, with our highest ranking team placing 3rd overall, turning their fictitious $500,000 into nearly $1 million in a few short hours. So congratulations to our RMSEL high school seniors for their success at the Stock Market Challenge. As with all of our districts, staffing has been challenging this year, and we continue to have new staff members brought onto our team. And I just want to take this opportunity to recognize 3 individuals, Mr. Yeshaya Menenberg, who will be our kindergarten through 6th grade special education learning specialist. Yeshaya was a RMSEL staff member 3 years ago and relocated while his spouse was going through grad school. And when the opportunity presented itself to come back to RMSEL, it was his first choice. So he started yesterday with us, returned to a family that he loves and knows, and getting started with our students in grades K through 6 that receive special education services. Also, Abby Sparks will be our 1st grade associate teacher, started yesterday with us, former avid summer camp counselor, has a passion and desire to work in the outdoor education community, and is excited to support our 1st grade full-time teacher. And then Shauna Ballinger, who's also a RMSEL parent, will be serving in the capacity of 1st grade student support para for a 1st grade student with significant needs. So great to have a full staff here at RMSEL as we go into the winter months. Speaking of the winter months, I want to acknowledge something that we know that is important to the physical health and social emotional health and well-being of our students, which is opportunities to participate in enrichment clubs and activities. As we exit the post-COVID pandemic normal or new normal, as it seems to be, I want to recognize Jessie Davis, our Director of Secondary Education, Athletics, and Activities. She has brought back a thriving program to serve kids across the K-12 school community. And at this time, we have the highest participation rate in school history. Approximately 50% of our students are participating in some type of enrichment club activity and or sport as we transition into the winter, which is amazing. I think students think it's a long day when they come to school and The sun's just coming up and they leave when it's dark, but it's exciting for them to have those connections. Yesterday in our lower school hallway, we had Pokemon Club on full force, along with our American Sign Language Club. And those are just two of the Monday opportunities. We have Math League operating on Saturday mornings with mountain biking, art, and our slate of winter sports for our middle school students. And I just want to thank my team members, and it's a pleasure to work alongside a dedicated team of professionals that work to serve our kids. So next item here is not for a discussion, as I know it is slated for later on the agenda today. But I want to take this opportunity to share with our viewing audience, as well as the board, that I'd like to recap as we begin today the timeline of events and current next steps for the RMSEL community joining us today regarding the intergovernmental agreement update. Just a quick set of bullet points here. Our IGA, or intergovernmental agreement, was renewed for a term of 5 years, 2022 to 2027, on June 30th, 2022, by all member districts. The Cherry Creek School District and Douglas County School District provided notice prior to November 1st, 2022, seeking termination per the terms outlined in the contract. Each district will remain a partner for the current 2022-2023 school year and through one additional fiscal year, 2023-2024. This time, RMSEL has conducted 2 community meetings held on November 2nd and November 16th. During those meetings, a question and answer feature was utilized to capture questions and concerns of the parent community and presented to the BOCES board. Legal counsel, RMSEL staff, and 2 BOCES members have created a draft timeline for next steps to be reviewed through discussion today and the months ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad, for giving us such a complete update. I appreciate it. And I'd open it up to any of my board colleagues who have any questions or comments on the executive director report. It's great to hear you're fully staffed. That's quite an accomplishment. That's wonderful, Chad. I appreciate all your hard work.
Yeah, and if I could just add, Chad, I really appreciate your opening comments, and specifically demonstrating and expressing your support for those like students and families and community members who particularly identify as a part of the LGBTQ+ community. It's very important, I think, for schools and institutions to express that support, and it's I think it's a very important step to demonstrate that, again, like RMSEL and our school districts are supportive of students and believe that everyone is entitled to feel safe everywhere, right, regardless of sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression, and that we are invested in a culture of belonging and inclusion. So thank you for starting off your report with those opening remarks.
Thank you, Brianna. I echo that as well. And I thank you, Chad, for providing leadership around that. And for our viewing audience, in case there are students watching or families watching who might need some extra support, how would they get extra support at RMSEL? Because I know that you've done that really well, of supporting students with your social emotional support. Could you just remind any students or families listening, if they need some extra support around this topic, who they would go to?
Yes, absolutely. So parents and community can reach out to their school level administrator to coordinate support. That would be Lindsay Emery in grades K-6 or Jesse Davis in grades 7 through 12. Our administrative staff will connect students with our mental health support staff, Melanie Wheeler, who is our on-site school psychologist, as well as our intern, Emma, who is with us 4 days a week as well, providing connections and support. And we know that post the holiday break, we've been contacted by parents of kids, unfortunately, directly impacted through their families in this tragedy.
Thank you. I'd also like to remind everybody of the Safe to Tell hotline, 1-877-542-7233 is also a great resource in case anyone would need that as well. So does anybody else have any other comments before I move to the next agenda item? And I know that we'll miss our student body presentation. So thank you, Chad, for acknowledging that due to our online platform, we won't have that. We'll look forward to that next month. And I know in the chat, Brianna just put a link to some more resources. Chad, maybe we can get that up on the RMSEL website too. Thank you. So our next agenda item will be open forum. Do we have anyone scheduled for open forum this morning?
We had one speaker scheduled, and I just sent a reminder email. I don't see that speaker in our participant list. Let me just verify. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't see that speaker at this time. Maybe impacted by snow. I'll reach out to them. Oh, no, she has entered the room, so I'll go ahead and admit.
Great.
Carrie, if you'll read the text, it's Mrs. Kat Douglas, and it says she's joining now.
Great, thank you. I don't have the text to read for open forum. Do one of you have that?
Yeah, let me pull it up here real quick.
Great. Good morning, Kat Douglas. Give us a minute. We're just getting the text ready here. We should be better at online meetings, but I think we've gotten a little out of habit after being in person for so long.
It's been very nice to
Yes.
search in my BOCES file here real quick. It is right here. Okay, I'll go ahead. Carrie, since I have it, do you mind if I read it?
No, not at all. Go ahead. That'll make it faster. Thank you, Chad.
Okay, thank you. All meetings of the board shall be open to the public because the board desires to hear the viewpoints of all citizens through the district and also needs to conduct its business in an orderly and efficient manner. It shall schedule time during board meetings for brief comments from the public. The board may set a time limit on the length of the public participation time and a time limit for individual speakers, which at RMSEL is 3 minutes. During times of general public comment at a regular meeting, comments may deal with any topic related to the board's operation of schools. Comments at special meetings must be related to the call of the meeting. Speakers may offer such criticism of school operations and programs as they concern them, but are encouraged to exercise their speech rights responsibly. Defamatory and abusive remarks are out of order. Remarks regarding personnel that are not public officials will not be accepted in public comment. The board president may terminate a speaker's privilege of address if a speaker engages in improper conduct or remarks, and the comments will be removed from the public record accordingly. Anyone who would like to address the board is encouraged to sign the public comment sign-in sheet with their name, address, etc. We've done that digitally. Ms. Kat Douglas has signed up. Members of the public will not be recognized by the president during board meetings, except as noted in this policy. In addition to public participation time during board meetings, the board is committed to engaging members of the community on an ongoing basis regarding community values about education during times other than the board's regularly scheduled meetings. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Kat Douglas for her 3 minutes. Kat, give me just one quick second to start a timer. And you may begin.
Good morning. My name is Kat Douglas, and I'm a proud RMSEL parent as well as a graduate. I'm here today to express my sincere disappointment with the recent decision by the Cherry Creek School District to withdraw from RMSEL. I had the opportunity to attend RMSEL as a Cherry Creek student, and it changed my life. My 18-year career in public service leading programs that help veterans, homeless youth, and low-income families escape generational poverty is all due to my time at RMSEL. I can go on and on about how RMSEL impacted my life, but the biggest testament is my children, now an 8th and 5th grader attending RMSEL since kindergarten with the intent to stay through graduation. We enrolled them while we lived in Douglas County School District, and we now live in Littleton Public School District. The commuting isn't easy, but we wouldn't trade it for the world. Yes, we know there are other schools, but one of the amazing things about RMSEL and why we choose to drive to Denver is for the curriculum and the student body. It is hard to find diverse thought and backgrounds in small schools, but RMSEL provides this. As a Cherry Creek student myself, the student body offered zero diversity. I am not just speaking of ethnicity and race, but life experience. RMSEL fostered a collaborative environment where students learned from each other, and it made us stronger. RMSEL is RMSEL thanks to the multiple school districts that participate. It adds a vibrance to the student experience that can't be captured when those districts stop participating. The decision robs all future RMSEL and Cherry Creek School District students of these experiences, and from what I can tell, for no good reason. The reasons cited are baseless and absolutely do not warrant this type of decision. I also find it shocking that Cherry Creek completely discounted all parent input by not providing a single opportunity to hear from the current RMSEL and Cherry Creek School District community. How many parents in Cherry Creek are planning to apply for the lottery that now have lost that opportunity? For over 25 years, Cherry Creek students have been an amazing part of the school. How many students in future years will no longer have that chance? And yet the parent community was never given a chance to weigh in. I ask why? Why now? The early years of the school were fraught with challenges. Parents, educators, students, and yes, the BOCES worked diligently to build the school. It wasn't clear if it would work, but everyone worked together no matter what challenges presented themselves. I find it truly hard to believe that whatever differences exist within the Cherry Creek School District, they can't be worked out. This decision must be overturned, and if Cherry Creek still believes there is value in this decision, which I wholeheartedly disagree with, then open it up to the Cherry Creek School District families. Hear from them and stop making decisions behind closed doors. To the BOCES, I appreciate you, I respect you. Your jobs as school board members are not easy. It is an added responsibility to sit on the BOCES, but it matters. The work that you do matters. I beg you to work together on whatever differences exist to resolve this matter quickly and restore the participation amongst all the districts. We are crew, not passengers. We can do this together. The parent and student community stand behind you.
Thank you, Kat Douglas. We appreciate it. Chad, is there anyone else for open forum this morning?
No, that's our only member for open forum this morning.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve consent agenda, item number 1, personnel recommendations.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, raise your hand. Aye. Aye. Thank you. Motion passes. Our next agenda item is a discussion item, the Cherry Creek School District and Douglas County School District withdrawal from the IGA, and I'll turn it back over to Chad.
Thank you, Carrie, for taking this time. Board members, appreciate the opportunity for discussion today. Really want to capitalize on the update that I provided in my IGA address that captures the timeline of events of where we are today. Also want to bring together that in public disclosure that myself, Director Dr. Olson, Director Christensen, and legal counsel for RMSEL, Coulter Bump, met once receiving the termination notices to determine a course forward for our local community, as well as next steps regarding the impact to our school. And so I just want to review that to start today. Not to recap what was shared at the beginning, but we do now know, per the terms of the contract, per the terms of open public meetings that were held, 2 of our districts have elected to terminate per the termination clause of the intergovernmental agreement. The intergovernmental agreement does remain a binding contract amongst our remaining district partners, meaning that we are still operational for the duration of the contract with our 3 district partners of Denver Public Schools, Littleton Public Schools, and Aurora Public Schools, as well as our at-large membership of the Public Education and Business Coalition. For review of timeline, as we understand it to be present, that will mean that Douglas County as well as Cherry Creek will be members of the BOCES for the current year, as well as next year. That means that all students participating in the enrollment process for this year during the month of January will continue to receive their preferred seat placement based on the allocations of the contract. Secondary to that, that would then happen next year as well for students participating in the January lottery of 2024 for the 2025-2026 school year. Between these 2 districts, they make up a combined seat allotment of up to 160 enrollment seats for allocation. We have at this time, as I shared, conducted 2 community meetings where we heard concern, as well as questions from our parent community. And we subsequently circulated that group of questions from the parent community meeting to this board for consideration and discussion. In addition to that, I've been working to understand additional impacts to this that I would like to present before the board today as we continue through this transition process. We have shared that we did not expect a financial implication because we are funded off a per pupil revenue-based system where we do not receive any mill levy override and or bond funds accepted from any district partner, and we operate independent based on our per pupil revenue allocation. We do receive the Handbook Bill 121345 BOCES financial assistance from the state, and that is a proportional allotment across our 5 districts based on the number of students enrolled, and we project that that will have a $75,000 implication to our budget for next year because, or for the terminating year, because 2 districts will be departing the agreement of which those 2 districts would no longer be a part of the BOCES, and we would no longer be we would no longer have access to that supplemental funding through the Colorado Department of Education. Second, to that point, once again, want to review that, our contract is still withstanding students in attendance as per the terms of the contract, unless the contract was to be in default, would be able to continue at enrollment through the term of graduation, which is a clause in the agreement partnership across the 5 districts. We have at this time provided a voluntary public disclosure for the terms of the lease extension agreement to the DAC bondholder site. So our bondholders have been informed of this termination clause of the 2 districts that was determined to be a voluntary disclosure by our bond counsel, Hester Parrott. We did meet the terms of that timing to upload that disclosure. We've not received any question or concerns based on the voluntary disclosure at this time. Finally, our planning conference that took place between the parties stated before is brought before this board today for consideration and discussion regarding next steps. We would like to take our time, be inclusive of the RMSEL community, understanding that all parties as parents want their kids to continue to be able to attend a school of distinction and excellence that has been outstanding choice program option for the past 30 years in the metro community. To do that, the recommendation for consideration is to provide a series of options regarding continued operation and governance once this termination takes place, and then bring that forward to the RMSEL community for feedback. Of such options would be looking at continuation as a BOCES. There are 8 partner BOCES that contain 3 members or less, and consideration of we continue this partnership moving forward, which other BOCES have continued to do. Looking at our district partners, considering alternative authorizers, understand that we need to vet all of these options. Authorizing under the Charter School Institute, authorizing under one of our single district partners, looking at our contractual agreements with our bond, with our contractual agreements in our facility agreement with the Denver Public School District, as well as the Denver Public School District serving in the capacity as our special education LEA at this time. So a lot to take into consideration with these series of events that have transpired. And open that to this board with those considerations and information for discussion of board members regarding recommendations to staff for next steps or commentary that you would like further information regarding as we go through this transition.
Thank you, Chad, for that overview. I appreciate it. I know you've gained a lot of information over the last couple of weeks, and you've worked with Dr. Tayo. I can never remember her last name, but I know that our portfolio department has been helpful as well in exploring some of the options. So I really appreciate all your hard work. I'd open it up to my board colleagues for any comments or questions that you have at this time.
I'll just add that I appreciate the thoughtful development of a timeline and next steps, exploring different trajectories to meet the needs of families and students. And I also appreciate your concerted effort to listen and to gain parent feedback with this decision as well. So I think that's really important for the RMSEL community. And again, one of the reasons that their folks are so committed to RMSEL and to how you are supporting them. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Brianna. Does anybody else have any questions or comments for Chad or any other discussion items? I appreciate your leadership during this time. I'll share with my board colleagues. Angela Christensen was able to attend the first meeting with families. I was out of town due to a death in my family. And then we both attended the second one and just were able to talk through some of the questions, as Chad mentioned, and I think just keeping open lines of communication and answering questions for families on what does this mean for them individually, how will this affect the future of RMSEL is really important. So I commend you, Chad, for keeping such an open line of communication and just reassuring people. And I know that you've also met with your staff as well, so that the staff feels comfortable that they know all of our next steps. So thank you. I'll turn it back over. Chad, do you have anything else you'd like to add before we move to the next item?
No, I'll just review the questions that were assigned to me for review.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Thank you.
One question was asked directed at myself or our staff is, do we anticipate any withdrawal from other districts due to declining enrollment across the state? At this time, we've received no additional notification that our partners would seek to an intent to withdraw from the BOCES. What's this due to our overall population? The BOCES will need to consider how the now vacant priority enrollment spots will be allocated in the 2024-2025 school year. Currently, both DCSD and CCSD will have enrollment lottery preference through this year, next year. The lottery for 2023-2024 school year determines enrollment for the 24-25 school year. The impact will not be immediate and only detrimental in the event that the remaining 3 partners would restrict enrollment of those vacant 150 spots. For the small percentage of siblings, will there be any priority preference? The BOCES will need to review the lottery enrollment policy to determine if siblings out of district enrollment would have any priority preferences in the lottery. Something this board will have to take consideration of as we make these revisions. This is currently not this is not currently an issue, as all sibling priorities are determined through students receiving spots that have a district allocation. By graduation, does this mean a kindergartner could stay through 12th grade or the end of the school year? As currently interpreted, any enrolled student may remain at RMSEL through graduation. School finance, does this withdrawal have any trigger within the IGA default of the renovation bond or some clause in the lease of the building that we as a community should worry about? As we interpret it to date, as long as RMSEL remains at capacity of up to 400 total students annually, per pupil revenue continues moderate growth that is measured across the last decade, excluding one COVID year. We have no concern of making continued bond payments. If the 150 spots are not reallocated, bond payments would become a concern for default. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. I forgot that we were going to go over those questions. Maybe we can get those questions and answers on the website as well, just so everybody has clear access to the questions and answers. Thank you. All right, our next agenda item is the audit presentation from Alicia Maslick from Clifton Larson and Allen LLP. And Chad, I didn't know if you wanted to provide any framing before I send that on to Alicia.
No, I appreciate Alicia and her team. I think they're impacted as we all are with staffing shortages, and I appreciate them taking the thorough dive into our financial statements and operation, giving them the extra few weeks before this rescheduled meeting today. So thank you to Alicia and her team. Thank you to Julie for all of her work in preparation for the audit. And I'll turn it over to Alicia for presentation. As a reference, in your board packet, you will have the documents that Alicia will be referencing. So Alicia, if you'd just like to, for the purposes of the digital platform today, kind of call out the titles of those documents so board members can reference them in their packet digitally as you go through.
Yep, absolutely. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. To just reiterate, my name is Alicia Maslick, and I'm with CLA, the auditors for RMSEL. This was my second year working on the audit. It was a pleasure to work with Julie and with Chad during the course of the audit. They are great to work with, and appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all this morning. And so the first item that we're going to look at is the bulk of our audit, the financial statements. So I want to turn your attention to, it's the fourth page in the document, but page number 1. So at the bottom it says page number 1. That is our independent auditor's report. We did issue an unmodified opinion, as we have historically for RMSEL. So, you know, that's always great to hear. An unmodified opinion is the best opinion that an entity can get. Quickly moving on, we have page 4 of that document. Pages 4 through 9 actually are the management's discussion and analysis, or MD&A. We do assist in preparing this document. However, you know, Julie reviews it. She adds any, you know, commentary that she wants. Really looking at this looks at, you know, management's analysis of what happened during the year, as well as you know, anything going forward that's expected to occur for the school. So again, that's pages 4 through 9, just kind of highlighting, you know, the items throughout the financial statements themselves. And then getting on to page 11. This is the statement of net position. So this is the balance sheet for the government-wide level. So it encompasses the funds that the board sees on a monthly basis, the school, so the general fund, as well as the capital construction fund, or as we have it labeled throughout the financial statements, the building fund. However, it also has long-term items that the board potentially doesn't see on a month-to-month basis. So under assets, we have capital assets. Again, those are a long-term item that aren't reflected at the fund level. A couple items I want to point out here are we have a category labeled buildings. Historically, that was labeled leasehold improvements. However, we can see the very bottom line for capital assets is lease assets. As you all may be aware, GASB 87 leases was implemented this year for the school. And so that brings lease assets onto the balance sheet, whereas previously leases, specific leases, had been just expensed. So those lease assets for the school are a copier, and the bulk of that $2.8 million is the lease that the school has with Denver Public Schools for the building. So that's a bulk of that $2.8 million. And again, it was determined that it would be appropriate to relabel the other line item buildings instead of leasehold improvements, so that there weren't two references to leases on the balance sheet for the capital assets. And then that buildings line includes the new building addition that was completed in fiscal year 2022. That makes up the bulk of that $12.1 million that RMSEL had its bond issuance in 2019 and that BEST grant funding for. And then going down into the liabilities, I want to point out that the non-current liabilities, both due within 1 year and due in more than 1 year, those also include liabilities for those leases. So what GASB 87 did is said through leases, entities have what they call a right to use asset. So RMSEL doesn't own the building, Denver Public Schools does, but RMSEL has the right to use that asset until 2050. And over the course of that time, over the next 28 years, RMSEL also has an obligation to Denver Public Schools to pay for the right to use the asset. And so that those amounts were adjusted as well in the liabilities section. At the bottom of the page, total net position is a positive 2.4 million. And I think that's really reflective of RMSEL using its bond proceeds and the BEST grant funding to improve its total net position through that new building, because again, that 12.1, that is really, a large balance, and adding that Denver Public Schools lease onto the balance sheet as well really helped improve the school's net position this year. Okay, moving on to the balance sheet at the fund level, which is page 13. One item I want to point out here is restricted cash and investments for the building fund. That decreased significantly from 1.8 million last year. And again, that's the result of the school using those bond proceeds to complete that building project. And then, using those remaining monies going forward, it's my understanding they'll be used for a new marquee as well as other miscellaneous projects around the school to use up the remaining bond funds. And then the what we would call in layman's terms the income statement. It has a fancy name, the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. Again, this is at the fund level and it's page 15. We see that the building fund had a large decrease in both revenues and expenditures. Since that building project was completed this year, the building fund saw a large decrease in expenditures as well as a large decrease in revenues, because not so many, or there weren't as many drawdowns on that BEST grant. Okay, so then I want to draw your attention to, those were, I guess, the financial statements. Are there any questions over the basic financial statements before we move on to a couple of the notes? Okay, hearing none, I do want to kind of go over the leases a little bit more to give you some context. So it's way further into this on page 25. It's note for capital assets. So we'll note in our beginning balance, June 30, 2021, under lease assets building, you'll notice that 2.8 million was added to the beginning balance in capital assets because this lease was already in place prior to fiscal year 2022. So prior to 7/1/2021, that was an addition to the beginning balance of capital assets. Again, capital assets we saw are put onto the statement of net position. However, looking at just the next page, note 7, long-term obligations, we can see our beginning balance for our debt in that first schedule, leases, building. There's an equivalent amount of 2.8 million put onto liabilities as well. Therefore, we did adjust the beginning balance of both capital assets and liabilities by the same amount, netting to 0. So there was no net position impact. For beginning net position, there is an impact to ending net position. And then the last thing I want to discuss in the financial statements is on page 50. It's our last note to the basic financial statements, note 14, subsequent event. As you guys have been discussing this morning, that new IGA was signed and is in effect July 1, 2022 through June 30, 2027. So we have that noted here as a subsequent event to fiscal year 2022. And we also have noted that Cherry Creek and Douglas County are withdrawing as of June 30, 2024. All right, so those are the financial statements. And then the next document that I want to discuss is the management letter. And this is the letter that's addressed to both the board and management. It's a short, just 2-page document. This document discusses our findings from the audit as far as they relate to internal controls. And there were a couple material weaknesses this year, one being that an invoice that's for insurance coverage for fiscal year 2023 that was paid in 2023 was recorded on the balance sheet in prepaid items and accounts payable. Since the invoice doesn't relate to fiscal year 2022, nor was it paid in fiscal year 2022, it shouldn't be recorded in that fiscal year at all. It's essentially just grossing up the balance sheet. And that was for $81,293 was the adjustment there. And then during our testing over expenditures, they're called expenditures at the fund level, but you can also think of them as expenses. There was an expenditure to specified play equipment for that outdoor learning space. It was the second half of the payment on that, and it just was not included in expenditures to then be reported in the income statement. And both of those adjustments were made by the school to adjust them. And then moving on to our significant deficiencies, the lack of segregation of duties and the financial statement preparation, those are communicated year over year. We do assist with preparing the financial statements for the school, and just noting here that we aren't part of the school's internal controls. Any of the information reported in the financial statements is what we've received from RMSEL, and that the financial statements are ultimately the responsibility of management, and they are reviewed by Julie with her knowledge of accounting and her knowledge of the school. And then the lack of segregation of duties item, again, this comes up year over year, and it's really due to RMSEL's small size. I'm sure you're all aware, just due to having Julie and then Chad and a couple other individuals who assist with the financial or the segregation where it's possible. There are just still such limited individuals to help with financial accounting that poses risks for things being recorded in error and not being caught because they aren't reviewed by another individual is just an example of a risk that the lack of segregation of duties poses. Because there is that limited segregation, we really view the board as part of the school's internal controls. And we really encourage the board, as you're reviewing information on a monthly budget, go in with a questioning mind, ask questions. Is there anything that is confusing or anything that doesn't seem to be within RMSEL's operations? Just really being that overview of the school's operations and its financial position. Our last item here is over unearned revenue. Adjustments that were being made at year end to defer revenue to the next fiscal year were increasing expenditures. However, deferring revenue to another year is meaning that expenditures weren't incurred to recognize that revenue. And thus the revenue was recorded in the fiscal year and should actually be decreased to then be deferred to the following year. So that was an adjustment that was made, was to decrease the expenditures that were recorded and decrease the revenue so that it is recorded in the appropriate fiscal year. We will review these comments in the next audit engagement. Outside of the lack of segregation of duties and the financial statement preparation, we would expect that the school can implement new processes or controls to address the other items that were discussed. Again, that segregation of duties, really the only way for the school to decrease the risk around that would be to hire more individuals that can assist, and for the school to implement more segregation of duties, which we understand is not always possible. So that's just something to expect going forward. All right, our last item is our governance communication. So the last packet It is a little bit bigger and it's just addressed to the board. This is a document that professional standards require us to communicate to the board. So not going to go through, too much of it. The one item I want to draw your attention to is it's the third paragraph down. It's the second paragraph under accounting policies. This just discusses GASB 87, as I'd mentioned earlier, the fact that that was implemented during fiscal year 2022, and that there was no restatement to beginning net position, as I kind of mentioned earlier. Moving on to the second page, about halfway down, it talks about corrected misstatements. We have attached to this document, so the last 2 pages of this file are the adjusting entries that were posted as a result of the audit. And then 2 sections down discusses management representations. We have attached the management representation letter to this document as well. And the management representation letter is management's acknowledgement that it provided all documents that were requested during the audit, and that management ultimately takes responsibility for the financial statements. As I'd mentioned earlier, we help prepare the financial statements, and it's really a collaborative effort between Julie and us to get the financial statements where they need to be. However, it is ultimately management's responsibility, or they ultimately take responsibility for the financial statements. We're just the external auditors to make sure that they are materially correct. All right, those are all the items that I wanted to specifically discuss. Are there any questions, anything that you saw during your review, or anything you have questions over from what I discussed today?
Feel free to just jump in if you have any questions to all my board colleagues or comments. Or Chad, if there's, or Julie, if there's anything you'd like to add to the presentation while we give some think time.
So I'll step in. I want to say thank you to our team of auditors for coming out with such a thorough look into our accounting practices. We know year over year that we see the deficiency of segregation of duties in an entity of our scale. Appreciate our team in the review process that we have in place that leads to this unmodified opinion, as Alicia recognizes the best outcome we can receive as an entity operating our school. We do have 3 items within the management letter that I'd like Julie and myself to address. We have called and conferred with Alicia regarding that. And if, as for reference, the last letter that she asked us to open there, fiscal year 2022 draft governance communication on page 10 refers to the actual total amounts of the deficiencies noted. So Julie, let's start and let's go through kind of each of these together. So we'll go through adjusting journal entry JE number 2, which refers to our first noted weakness, which is the accounting process we used for prepayment of our insurance and how that was recorded and how we'll go about correcting that in the future. So Julie, if you'd like to comment on our practice that we will engage in to ensure that that's not there in the future.
So this is an entry that we get every single year with regard to our insurance for the school. It was put into prepaid, and I thought it was expensed in the existing year, the year we're in now, 22-23, and it was not. But what we're going to be doing is looking specifically at the year-end contracts, invoices that come in, and making sure they're put in the correct fiscal year. So it's something for this year that was missed, evidently, by me.
Thank you, Julie. Certainly a piece that we all understand within our districts as our fiscal years close in calendar years with school years, and how we are going to go into the month of June and just make sure that all of these items that we have for prepayment for employee benefits and prepaid expenditures into the July year are documented correctly. Alicia, you have any comments about that conversation that we've had to date?
No, I don't. Just the one thing to keep in mind is, insurance is typically invoiced in advance. So I think that that's kind of just where that confusion came from, is the invoice was received prior to fiscal year end. So just keeping in mind when those payments are made is really going to impact, is it going to impact the current fiscal year or just the following year?
Thank you. Second one for note here is journal entry number 3. This has shown up a couple times here in the last 2 audits regarding the purchase of the outdoor learning lab space. As you all know, these were purchased in the COVID pandemic, which were tied up with first and foremost, supply chain challenges, and then following that with engineering spec for wind and snow load before the construction of these could take place. And so therefore the series of payments across multiple years and the recording of that reflects this weakness here. Julie, I'll speak to the fact that this asset has been assembled. It is in operation. It is complete. So we do not expect to have any further challenges as related to this expense across multiple years. And we'll make sure to work with our team as well as our audit team in the event we see something like this that would transpire in future years. So Julie, any comments with your favorite vendor and spec?
I want it to go away. So basically $94,017 wasn't expensed properly in the 2021-2022 fiscal year. I made the entry directly to retained earnings. So that's what this issue is. Do you want to talk more about that, Alicia? That is, we want spec to go away.
No, I think you covered everything with that one.
Great. And then the third material item to note is one that shows up on our audit annually, which is how we carry over balances respect to expense of trips under adjusting journal entry number 4. And that's how we go about carrying over funds from those accounts: Lower School Yellowstone Civil Rights, Colorado Trail High School trip, landmark trip allocations. That money is retained as we roll those funds up to our landmark trip experiences for kids. And so this year we are excited, barring any triple threat of illness or viruses or challenges as we continue to operate through the endemic phase of a pandemic. We're headed back to sailing in California. We're on the books for the second week of May. We're working through planning a 8th grade capstone experience to Washington, D.C., and then rolling up our civil rights trip experience to our high school students for future years based on the alignment of the new social studies standards here in our state. And so excited and hopeful and optimistic. And that's where we have to remain as a team of educators and working with kids every day. So you see that every year on there. Julie, any comment under that adjusting entry that I didn't cover? You're muted.
I just want to kind of explain what's happening. So in our budget every year, we take in money that is fee money from parents, and then that is budgeted out to the various classrooms or crews to use for their field work, for whatever they need. Any unused expense that a teacher is given, that money will roll to the year of the landmark trip. So anything K through 5 rolls to the sailing trip, landmark trip. Anything that's in grade 6 rolls to Yellowstone for the following year. 7 and 8 go to the civil rights trip. So in essence, we're trying to do 2 things. One is to take their unused expense money and roll it to the year of a landmark trip, which works for modified accrual accounting. It doesn't work for the end of the year accounting that Alicia goes through and looks at on the audit. For them, it is revenue that's not earned. So that's why that entry shows up on there. And it will show up every single year because I have to be able to track it from whose classroom didn't use it up to the crew trip that it goes on. So that's going to show up there every year, if that makes sense. Did I miss anything with that one, Alicia?
No, I think just want to reiterate that, from our perspective, we're looking at financial reporting, which is the accrual basis of accounting, not based around budget. And that's where some of these adjustments are coming from, is looking budgetary versus accrual basis accounting.
What all of the board sees every month with the management summary report is our actual budget to actual and any variances in there. What auditors are doing at the year end is looking at our financial statements at one point in time. I still need to know, at one point in time at June 30th. So that's the difference here.
Thank you all for that additional context. I'll open it back up and see if any of my board colleagues have any questions or comments. If not, thank you so much, Alicia, for your hard work and your firm's. Oh, Chad, go ahead.
We'll just need to do a vote to accept the audit for 2022 with an unmodified opinion.
Yep. So, but thank you, Alicia, for your. I'm sorry, Chad.
You're good.
Okay. I just wanted to thank Alicia for her hard work on this, and Julie and Chad for your work. I know it's an extra layer, but I appreciate your transparency in getting all of this ready for us. So thank you. With that, I will entertain a motion to accept the audit as presented with unmodified, whatever you just said, Chad. Sorry, I'm operating a little bit on a low battery here today. Do we have a motion to accept the audit?
Gotcha, Carrie. I move to accept the audit with an unmodified opinion as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you again for being here today, Alicia. We appreciate it. Our next,
thanks everyone.
Thank you. Our next agenda item is the fee structure recommendation for school year 23-24, and I'll turn it over to Chad.
So as the board knows, at our October meeting, presented the current position of our impact from the inflationary period that we're in, specifically staffing costs, transportation, fuel, and food. Those costs are directly associated with the adventure program that we provide to students at RMSEL. As concern of this board, the board wanted to seek more information from the RMSEL parent community, as well as having an understanding and net position with financial aid. We currently have $70,000 plus in unused financial aid, but you'll see in the management summary and financials that you have today. So net position of financial aid is positive and accessible to parents and students and communicated. The board asked me to create a survey to go out to our community, kept that survey very simple and a unique ID to each family. So we received a response per family, not per parent, to try to give you the most transparent series of results. We wanted to hear equal voice or equitable voice from those families who may have multiple students in our school. Broke the survey results out into 3 school levels, K through 5, 6 through 8, and 9 through 12. And you have the full allocation of those survey results available to you in your board packet today, as well as the copy of all the subsequent comments that are always helpful to see where parents are responding with what they would like us to continue to work towards in regards to fees and other things oftentimes that you get an open comment around things that they want. If you could go in and run a word capture on this, I think the word capture of that commentary is, how can we pay teachers more? Certainly these fees are restricted. So for the good of the order and the good of the local community watching, we cannot allocate those fees across accounts. These fees are restricted funds that we can only spend on these targeted areas. As we went through that, specifically our current fee totals are disclosed as $1,044 for K-5, $1,235 for 6 through 8, and $1,414 for our high school students. Current fee considerations, as the board renewed the IGA, they allocated 20% of fees to financial aid. And as shared, we do have an abundance of financial aid at this time. We've been on a fee increase freeze for 2 school years. And then we have full unused, we did a full unused fee return in the 1920 school year accordingly. Our inflationary costs are described there: 63% for bus replacement, crew trip food approximately 20%, staffing 23% for our contract guides. My apologies, hold on one second. I knew it would happen. Fuel reference there up 80%. And then the current consumer price index that takes into consideration all the things that our inflationary numbers come out to is just for adjustment 7.7%. So if we were looking at real estate costs and other things that don't directly impact RMSEL, the overall aggregate as of October was 7.7%. BOCES sought feedback, got a high degree of feedback. We sent 339 unique IDs. We received 115 survey results, represents 34% of return and RMSEL families participating. Just kind of bracketed that into a quick chart for reference of the board of where folks came in with their responses. Tried to be considerate of the variance between those school levels as well. And the quick snapshot of that is 93.9% of respondents supported a fee increase between 1% to 4%. 31% of that group responded that they support the fee increase between 1% and 3%, and 62% supported a maximum increase of 4%. Please note that there was a variance of 9.6%, or that's approximately 11 families present across all increases at all school levels. And for review, the original recommendation of staff to the board was a 1% annual increase, which would be $11 to $15 across school levels for next year. The BOCES did not take a motion at this time and requested the feedback that we've provided today. So I'll open that for the board for consideration of knowing that this meeting is important for fees. If the board takes a no position of increase or a position of 1% to 4% as presented, we requested that happens today without a December board meeting, and then moving into January, of which is our enrollment time. We need to be able to disclose to parents what this figure is before asking for the recommitment. So that's the timeline of consideration today in November. So turn it over to the board for any questions on the fee increase or presentation of a motion for any one of those 5 options, 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4%.
Great, thank you, Chad. And thanks for doing this survey. I know that was really important to all of us. I'd like to open it up to this time to any of my board colleagues for questions or comments. I think one thing that I'm still wondering about is how we can I know that you do a good job of this, so this isn't like a criticism, but I'm wondering how we can get that if we have $70,000 in the scholarship that we're not being used. I'm wondering how we can continue to get that word out. I know that you're going to be starting more open houses here, and I'd love it if we could get invitations to that, the calendar invites to that, in case some of our board colleagues would like to attend that. I know I drive by RMSEL frequently because I live so close, but to just make sure that families know that that money is available as we continue to move through the pandemic. I know that there are different families impacted by that, and I know that we have it in many different places, but I think it would be worth just continuing to think how we can get that information out. Would anybody else like to add any thoughts or make a motion to approve any of the fee structures? Chad, could you just reiterate the 5 options again, or maybe put them in the chat as well, so we can all be sure that we're on the same page.
You're muted, Chad.
Sorry about that. Thank you. Consideration 1 would be for a 0% increase remaining with a frozen fee structure at this time. Second would be for a 1% increase. Third being a 2% increase. Fourth being a 3% increase, or fifth being a 4% increase. We know that the totals of those range at 1% between $11 to $15, at 2%, $22 to $29, 3%, $31 to $42, 4%, $41 to $56, and those are annual increases. Once again, the original recommendation of staff based on our position was for the smallest increment of that at 1%. The response rate of parents was 93% supported an increase, with the bulk of that supporting the highest increase, but knowing that while we have that representation of our community, that does not represent each and every family's needs. So that was our original consideration of 1%, knowing that our costs continue to rise significantly outside of 1%, but trying to be mindful and respectful of the least increase that we could have based on the inflation impacts.
Thank you for that recap. Do I have a motion from any one of my colleagues to approve any of the 5 options that have been presented? Giving everybody a little think time. I know it's a lot, and I understand the urgency. I know that your costs are increasing every year, and I also am thinking about the discussions that this board has had before around being a public school and not wanting to increase fees and continue to charge families, and also being somebody who did a lot of travel with students. I know that that's an important thing to be able to consider. I did a lot of fundraising when I was a teacher at Kepner, and I did trips with students. And so I feel like I'm caught between 2 values here of continuing to have free public education for all students and recognizing that RMSEL provides something different for all students. And we put that out there to the universe to possibly get funders who would just take this all away for us. And I know, Chad, you've done some work behind the scenes and looking into that and seeing what we could do. But until that happens, I'd like to make a motion that we approve option 2, the 1% increase for families for the coming school year. Do I have a second?
I would second.
All right, with that, all in favor, say aye, raise your hand so it's clear. We have all 5 board members approving the 1% increase, so the motion passes. Thank you. And thank you, colleagues, for our discussion regarding the fee increase.
And I have a quick question. And Carrie, I do appreciate you moving this forward. I think I was experiencing some of that tension as well, and trying to understand like the future implication of what this means for RMSEL. And I'm also, I'm not trying to digress back into the agenda, but just trying to make sense of like the moving parts, and what this also means with having 2 districts pull out from the IGA. One question that is coming up for me, particularly around like the financial aid, is whether or not, I know that we've had brief discussions in the past about like what it looks like to share information about RMSEL, broadly in the community and how that fits into outreach efforts. The reason I'm saying this is because I'm wondering what it might look like to elevate, I guess, RMSEL's, like the option of attending RMSEL in Cherry Creek and Douglas County over the next year for those families who may want to take advantage of, being admitted to the school before things shift. And the reason I'm naming this and also wondering like how this connects to financial aid. Gosh, I'm not really formulating this very clearly, but I'm wondering if there might be efforts to outreach to families, and particularly those who could take advantage of the financial aid that is present at RMSEL. Because I think it's amazing that there's financial aid there. And I want families to continue to lean on it if needed. And I'm wondering if there might be families that could utilize it and have a step into the RMSEL community, particularly over this next year. So if anyone can make sense of that, that thought that I have there, please feel free to respond. Otherwise, I'll continue to formulate it and maybe take the conversation offline.
I think, Brianna, we were kind of thinking in a similar thought process like that. So I think it'd be good for those of us who'd be interested to attend some of the open houses, and maybe from our lens with the communities that we represent, think about how could we get maybe some new families to come to the open houses that haven't been able to do that before, and maybe just offer that, show that that RMSEL is an option, and especially for families who think that RMSEL is out of their price range because they can't afford this fee, to just be able to recruit. And Chad, I'm also mindful of your comment of not wanting to cannibalize our other public schools that are around the neighborhood, but I'm just thinking, RMSEL is such a small school and there are students for whom this would resonate. And I think we've heard from so many students how they didn't feel seen or heard in other schools, and RMSEL just fit that niche for them. And so I'd love to invite some of my board colleagues to join me in some of the upcoming open houses at RMSEL and think about how could we extend this offer to those students for whom this might be a great opportunity and they're just not aware of the options that are there. So Brianna, I hope that that's sort of where you were going. I see your heart. So yeah, that's it. Great. Okay. Thank you for that additional thought. We appreciate that. So with that, we'll move to the next agenda item of the budget. And I assume I'm turning that over to the fabulous Julie. Thank you.
All of you have seen most of these management items in the management summary. The one thing I did want to point out is our actual count on October 1st came in at 390. So the revised budget that we put forth in January will have a whole bunch of adjustments because of that, with regard to fees, with regard to classroom budgets, everything. It revises here in January. So that was the big thing over the last budget. Everything else in here is pretty standard. We received some ELPA money for English language learners. You've seen the budget appropriation resolution. You've seen the BOCES resolution, which Chad was speaking to earlier about. It would be a $75,000 decrease to our funding with the pull out of the two districts, but that's in a year and a half, 2 years. Everything else in here has to do with expenses that are either out of whack from what we budgeted or were not budgeted in the first place in the case of Spanish. So those items will be revised on the budget in January. None of them is out of line with what's happened in the past. So are there questions about the financial statements?
Anybody have any questions for Julie? I feel like we've gone through everything pretty well and we all feel caught up. I know when I open them up again, Julie, I just compliment you on how easy it is to follow. So thank you. All right. Seeing no other questions, with that, I will turn it over to Chad for the future agenda items.
Great, thank you. The one that'll be most pertinent here is participation in the Family and Medical Leave Insurance FAMLI program that all of your districts have taken up to this time. Coulter has provided guidance to us on this process that she's worked with in our districts. Just for disclosure, that is the new state account, which is 0.9% of a employee's salary to go into a paid leave insurance pool. All of our district partners have elected to opt out of that as entities, but it does present the opportunity for the individual employee to enroll. We have to go through a process of disclosure with our staff, which we will do. And then we will have to request a special meeting of this board, with that being the sole topic for the board to take consideration as RMSEL opting in or out. So just want to put that out there. I'll get some more information to the board here in the next bit regarding the timeline for that, which will need to take place in December at some time. But we do need to go through the process first of community notification with our staff and communication with them. So Angela, I saw you had your hand raised there.
You answered my question. I just wanted to, I knew we had to have it done by the end of December, so wanted to make sure that was on the radar. Thank you.
Yeah, we attempted to get that on today's docket for meeting, but understand that we need to present this to our staff and make sure that they understand their opportunity, even with this implication. When you tell a group of professionals and people that you care about that this is something that we're electing to not participate in, they need to understand that the implication is that they can still individually participate at the same rate that the group would have been. And we know that certain members of our community might not be planning in extending additional members of their family and or planning for some type of event that would remove them from work for a period of up to 12 weeks. So I just need to go through that community input process first and bring that to the board. I'll communicate with the board within the coming weeks. We can host that meeting digitally, single topic meeting, special meeting of the board, and to take up this matter. But the most pertinent part of this is going through this with our staff accordingly, and making sure we meet the timelines.
Right. Thank you. Knowing how busy everybody's schedules are for December, I just ask that we get that meeting scheduled sooner rather than later. And I'm assuming we will, do that digitally or through the internet, like we're doing right now instead of in person, just for ease, because I know my board colleagues' calendars probably look like mine for the month of December. Just lots going on with end of the year activities. So thank you for that. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? So for our viewing public, look for that to be posted. And then our next regularly scheduled meeting of the BOCES for RMSEL is on January 24th, 2023. So with that, I'd just like to thank everybody for a great year. We've done a lot of really good work, and it's been a lot, as always. And I'd like to thank Chad and your staff for your leadership and all you've done to keep RMSEL going through all of these challenging times. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I will move to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Great. With that, we are adjourned for the 2022 school year, and we'll see you. Oh, actually, no, we'll see you in December when we come back, and then in 2023. So thank you all for joining us today. We appreciate it. Thank you.